Welcome to the Missoula Public Library. Tonight our program will be presented by Jenny Burrows, who is the Government Documents Librarian, the interim head of Bibliographic Management Services at the Mansfield Library, University of Montana. Jenny will talk about Government 2.0, Keep Up, Talk Back. We'd also like to remind you of a whole slew of programs we've got next week for National Library Week. Anyway, there will be drawings every day at the library, so come in and sign up. Wednesday, we are having our first graphic novel book discussion on The Watchmen, so try and make it for that. And now I'll hand over to Jenny. Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate it. What I want to do is talk tonight a bit about Government 2.0, and basically this is part of our celebration for the Government Documents Library at the University of Montana. It's our centennial. We became a depository library in 1909, and so we're doing a slate of programs this week in honor of that centennial. So I'll talk just a little bit about the history of depository libraries to give you just a little bit of context, but what I really want to focus on are the new resources in government information that citizens can use to keep up with government information. So these are things that are new within about the past 5 years or so to kind of support transparency in government. And so we'll talk a little bit about different tools to track bills, to find out who's funding who, and things like that. And as I said before, ask questions as you have them. So just to start, I want to talk just a little bit about kind of the historic model and the new model. So as I said, Art My Library, the UM Library, was designated in 1909 as a federal depository library. It's part of the Federal Depository Library program that is run by the U.S. Government Printing Office in Washington, D.C. And the intent of this program was to distribute the works of government, the publications of government, throughout the United States so that citizens would be relatively close geographically to the works of their government. Also the benefit of having this distributed model is that you had a certain amount of redundancy in the publications. So if there was a fire at one library or something like that, the content and the works of government would be preserved in that sense. What else? The other thing about the historical model is that basically people had to travel to the library to get access to these works or purchase their own copies from the federal government. The new model is one where you don't necessarily have to come to the library to get access to the works of government, because our concept of convenience has really changed. Where it used to be convenient to go a few miles to the library, now we really want to get access at home, at work, at school. And so this is what the federal government is responding to in creating some of these more transparent tools. So at Art My Library, we maintain a really large historical collection, which is great for research on campus and research in Montana in general. And what remains the same is that we provide the expertise to help people find the information that they need, whether it's in old books that are from the 1890s, or if it's new material on the web. So that's what we tend to do. So as I said, I wanted to focus on the different transparency tools. Some of these things are really new within the past year, and some are somewhat new or really come to fruition in the past 5 years. And what they have in common is that they try to make it easier for the public to get access to the works of their government. So you get access to, as I said, funding information, get access to all the different works, the new regulations, new laws, different reports. And what is nice about this web publication of all these materials is that it's much faster. You don't have to wait anymore for the mail delivery to Montana or for things to be printed and sent out and cataloged and things like that. You get same-day publication oftentimes with these agencies, and it has that common benefit of keeping people apprised, keeping people informed, and with that information we can better do our work of holding our government accountable, essentially. Yep.
Do you have to be a student or have a library card from the Mansfield Library to use this website?
That's a very good question. No, you don't have to be a UM student to have access to any of these materials. And even with our historical collection, we're open to the general public. So anybody can come in, and any Montana resident can check out a large number of our books, especially the government documents. But with these resources in particular, you can use them on the free web, basically. They're open to the public, and other countries, actually, when I think about it. So the first one I'll talk about and not spend a ton of time on because it's really user-friendly is the new White House website. There had been, of course, a White House website in the Clinton era and the Bush era. But what was interesting on January 20th at noon, it changed completely in terms of format. What remained the same was kind of the rapid access to policy statements, information on issues, statements by the president. But what changed a little bit was the inclusion of a blog for rapid posting of material. There are new kind of accountability websites, so I'll talk a little bit about like recovery.gov to help people find information about the recovery and stimulus bills. What I find is really different is this real sense of openness and transparency and really seeking input from the public. There are many more task forces I'm seeing now on the White House website than I had seen before, with really open forms for submitting feedback and comments. And I think that's a new kind of transparency tool that we're seeing with this administration. What's also nice, and I have a little thing in the top corner about get updates and contact us. They're very, very clear about how to contact them. And you can get email updates, you can subscribe to RSS feeds for a lot of new information from the White House website. And it's a very user-friendly site. Thomas will spend just a little bit more time on because it's a really wonderful and rich resource, but not quite as user-friendly as the White House website. Thomas is a great resource, a great website for accessing the works of Congress. It's a great database for current and relatively recent legislation. So you can read the text of bills, you can see how people voted, you can read the text of speeches on the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate. And it's really excellent for materials, as I say, from about 1989 to the present. For older materials, you'll need to use the print version of the Congressional Record and other print resources. In that case, it's really helpful to go to your local depository library, which in this case, the closest one for Missoula is the UM library. And we keep all the print resources. But let me get into the website really quickly and give you a couple of quick examples. So what is nice and relatively recent is including links at the very top for some of the hottest bills, essentially, or the ones that people have asked about the most. So for instance, there's a quick link to the stimulus bill and to the homeowner rescue bill. But otherwise, if you're looking for something else, if you had read something interesting in the paper and wanted to track down the bill, it's very easy to do that. The search box searches the most recent Congress. And a little further down, you can search multiple previous Congresses. So if you wanted to track down a bill that was passed in 2002, for instance, you can do that in the previous Congresses section. Let me show you quickly from one of the top links, kind of the key page. Okay. So it sends me, in this case, to kind of a list of omnibus and appropriations bills. Okay. Let me get to, what I want to get to is the summary and status page. This is, to me, the kind of the key page for any of these bills because it kind of consolidates all the information you generally need. So it'll tell you, the formal title, it'll tell you who introduced the bill and when. It gives you related bills. It tells you if it passed, for instance, in the public law number. More importantly, it gives you the different versions of the text of the bill, so you can see the different iterations of it before it passed or as it's in process, including the enrolled version that finally passed. It gives you a CRS summary. CRS is the Congressional Research Service, so it's part of the Library of Congress, and they do research for members of Congress. One of the things that they do is summarize key bills, so it kind of gives you the highlights of what the bill is about. And over here is where you can really track the bill on the right-hand side. So you have major congressional actions, all congressional actions, and actions with amendments, which gets very, very lengthy. But what's nice, it gives you kind of the blow-by-blow of how this bill moved through Congress, including links to the amendments. It tells you where it was considered or debated, and it gives you the congressional record page, and you can click through to the congressional record. And that's kind of a quick overview of how you would search through Thomas. Let me get back to the Thomas homepage. What is also nice, or what I like at least, is you can look up things by senator as well. So if you wanted to see, for instance, everything that was sponsored by Max Baucus. You can do that very easily. So you can see things that he's sponsored. And I'll pick this one. That's 280. So when I click on that, it gets me to that bill summary and status page, and it kind of gives you everything you need. And it tells you the latest action. In this case, it's not yet passed. Right now, it's been referred to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, for instance, and that's where the bill's sitting at the moment. So, back on the Thomas homepage, what I will also point out, it has nice quick links to the House and Senate. The nice thing about the House and Senate websites is that it makes it very easy for you to find your contact information for your legislators. So you can find the websites for Senators Baucus and Tester and Representative Rayburg very easily. And of course, their websites will have information on how to keep up with what they're doing in Congress. It gives you options for emailing them, calling them, where their offices are. It talks about what they're working on, their various press releases. And that's becoming very common. So it's no longer a case where you have to write a physical letter to your senator. You can actually send an email, and that's actually faster in some cases. Some senators will also include RSS feeds for changes on their website, or I know that there's some senators and other representatives that are on Twitter, for instance, so they're using the microblogging service to keep up with their constituents and let them know what they're working on. So the government is really trying to be where their users are, be where their constituents are, and to help them stay apprised of what they're working on. Go back. Okay. The next site I wanted to talk about was regulations.gov. This is a really interesting, in my mind, website. It has a really good purpose, and it's starting to come to fruition. It could use a little bit of improvement yet. It's still a little bit cumbersome to use, but the model is really good. So in terms of regulations, these are the actions of the executive branch. So those regulatory actions, we call regulatory law. So where Congress passes a bill with a larger idea, the regulations are kind of how you get it done, essentially, in the executive branch. And what regulations.gov tries to do is pull all that regulatory action together. All this material is still published in the Federal Register, which is a physical item, but also a digital publication. And it notifies just members of the general public of upcoming meetings, of upcoming regulations, and it gives people the possibility to comment on them, to see these regulatory laws before they're actually enacted, essentially. It gives that kind of layer of vetting of the material and submitting user or citizen comment on these things. So what you'll find are proposed regulations, you'll find accompanying documents, and what's really nice, I think, is that it will also include forms to submit comments. My complaint with some of this is that there's so much stuff in regulations.gov that sometimes it's hard to get to exactly what you need. You have to know a little bit what you're looking for. But this is the proposed portal for regulatory action, where before you had to go to all the different agency websites to find the regulatory action and figure out how to comment. They're trying to pull it together in one place. So let me go to that website really quickly. It looks like a very simple search box, and it's great, but there's so much stuff. So what I'll do, in the paper this morning was something about the EPA seeking Superfund status in Superior, Montana. And it was something that when I went to the EPA website for Region 8, which is the region that covers Montana, they had a press release about it, and they also indicated that you could submit your comments either to them directly or via email, but also through regulations.gov. So I'm going to find that here. I'm going to do a quick search for Superior. If I want, I could also, up front, select documents that are accepting comments. But just doing a search for Superior comes up with 9,400 items. So it's a lot. But what you can do, you can add in terms and narrow your results. So I can limit it to just things from the EPA, which cuts it in half. I can limit it to things with an open comment period, which I know this is in an open comment period. They want comments from the public on this proposed action. And so you get a shorter list of things. It's 32. You can also see things that were comments started today or things that were posted within the past 3 days and limit it down to 11. So you can kind of narrow it down. But what's tricky about it, it doesn't say, Superfund status for Superior, Montana, which would be what I think the general public would seek, generally speaking. What they use is kind of agency language for what they consider to be the name of that regulation. And so what they are looking for are comments on proposed rule number 50, which is kind of vague. But I can see here they talk about Region 8, Superior, Montana, Flat Creek. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So when I open that up, what it gives me is this docket, essentially. And so let's see. It gives me, under views, there's a PDF icon, and that gets you to the proposed rule. There's also this little bubble for add comment, and what's really nice is that'll get you to a comment form right away. So if you have a comment on that proposed regulation, you can just submit it and it goes right to the agency, which is pretty slick, in my opinion. I'm going to go back one. What is also nice, they have this option for bookmark and learn more. I think that's what I want. Let me click on that arrow. That's not quite what I want. Let me back up. I'm going to click on the docket. The docket should bring together all the different information on this particular proposed regulation. I may need to refresh it. It has a lot of potential, but there's some kinks in it that need to be worked out, I think.
So docket is like the reference number?
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. The reference number for this proposed action. That is interesting. There's supposed to be more information below it, but it's not cooperating today. Okay. I'm going to back up just a little bit to the results. All right. The one other thing I wanted to point out, there is an option for notification. So if I click on that, it gives you the option of basically following this regulation. So say it was something that you were very, very interested in and you wanted to know whenever something new was added to this, a new document, new comments from other people, what you can do is put in your email address and you'll get an update whenever new information is added to that docket, which again is something that I don't think you could really do very easily before. It needs some improvement, but it's a step in the right direction, I think. The next thing I'll show, this is a very user-friendly site. So USA.gov is another one of those portal sites that the government is trying to produce. And this is a way, it's kind of mimicking the Google search in a sense, but it is a portal for searching for federal and state government information. So if you're not quite sure where to start, USA.gov is not a bad place to start. What I also like about it is that it has some options for browsing through by topic. So if you want to find really trusted good sites on health information, for instance, you can browse through and find some recommended sites on health information with USA.gov. And as I said, the interface is extremely user-friendly, and I think people should give it a try once in a while and see if it works for them. Okay. I wanted to bring up a couple of things for government science, just because I know this community is really interested in scientific research. There's 3 sites that I particularly like and use frequently to keep up with government-funded research, scientific research in particular. Science.gov is very similar in some sense to USA.gov, and that's trying to do a similar kind of thing. It searches across thousands of government-sponsored science websites, and it brings back websites, it brings back citations from journals, full-text documents, but it's trying to search across all the different scientific entities within the federal government. So it's a nice another starting point for research if you're looking for scientific things. Science Accelerator is a Department of Energy product, and it searches across multiple Department of Energy databases. It's very robust. It produces or retrieves citations as well as full text, a lot of full text actually. So it's a really nice one. And the other one I wanted to talk about was Tree Search, which is a Forest Service database that's really come into its own in the past couple of years. So it produces, or I keep saying produces, it retrieves primarily full text documents from Forest Service researchers. So those are things in the research stations all across the country, as well as Forest Service produced research that's published in traditional journals, for instance. And it's just a really nice intuitive database if you're interested in forestry and want to find government-sponsored research. So I'd like to talk about some different resources for following the money, because it's always kind of interesting and people want to know where their tax dollars are going, of course. So there's different ways to find out what proposed initiatives cost, what proposed legislation will cost the taxpayers. People want to know sometimes what the budget for a specific program is, and I find it interesting that you can also figure out who gets government contracts, for instance. So the first two I wanted to talk about would be the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, which is part of the White House. It's a very user-friendly site, and it's the place to go for the official presidential budget. Recovery.gov is one of those resources that they're trying to create for special initiatives. They're trying to create a very simple URL to track different issues. And again, it's a pretty user-friendly site. But with this, the Recovery.gov is trying to make it transparent where our stimulus money is going with the different agencies. So what you can see, it breaks down in some general ways and some more specific ways where the funding is going. So for instance, they have some sites for accountability and transparency, state progress. I haven't looked at this one in a little bit. Let's see. So various states have recovery sites about how they're going to use the stimulus funds. If I go to Montana, it's a special Montana Reinvestment Act website that they've created to talk about where the stimulus money is going to be going, which of course we know is still up in the air right now until the legislature closes, I think, in May. But back on the recovery.gov website, what I also like under agency progress and resources, all of these agencies, all of these federal agencies have their own kind of recovery.gov webpage on their site to talk very specifically about where they're allocating their stimulus funds. I know there was something in the paper this week about, let me remember, it was Justice Department. The Justice Department was talking about where their stimulus money is going for Indian country, for instance. And so they're really laying out which programs are getting how much money so that it's more transparent to the taxpayers, basically. So under agency recovery sites, it's very intuitive. It breaks it down. If I go to Department of Interior, for instance, it goes to the DOI website, but to a specific recovery page for them. And so they talk about how they're going to implement that, where the money's going to go. Pretty intuitive. This next one is a really surprisingly powerful database, and I call it my secret weapon in a sense because it's not that well known. But the Consolidated Federal Funds Report is a census product, and it's really, really interesting. So it breaks down pretty clearly to the state and county level, but you can also tell sometimes if it's a local government grant. But it tells where federal funds are going geographically, essentially. So it breaks down how much states and counties are getting for their programs to the direct grant level, for instance. So let me go to that and show you an example, because I think that'll kind of make it clearer what it can really do for citizens. So 2007 is the most recent year. It's got a queryable database. So you can retrieve information by a particular program. So if you want to see for a particular program where the money is going, for instance, how the money breaks down by state, for instance, you can do that. What I tend to like to do is see for a particular county, for instance, what kind of funding they're getting. So I had a couple of good examples. So let me pull up Missoula County. So first, select the state. Yes, I want a specific county. And I can do all types, or I could do direct loans, direct grants, direct payments, things like that. Let me do grants. That tends to be one of the more interesting things. It tends to be kind of these one-time only funds to counties for specific purposes. And let me get Missoula County. And it takes a minute.
It says contact us by email down there at the bottom on the right, on the left. Can you ask them a question and they respond to your inquiry, or what is that good for?
Good question. So it just goes to govs.cffr@census. So I'm not sure if it's, you could ask about the database, or I'm not sure, but it's very specific at least to the CFFR. So I think it's not just a webmaster link, that you could ask them kind of a content question, and I would hope that they would respond. Yeah.
That would be really cool.
I would give that a try. Absolutely. No harm to that. It's just running a little bit slow today. I'll give it another few seconds to see if it'll pull it up. And if not, I can describe a little bit what I've seen before with it. So you'll see, for instance, things like how much money for roads or for federal highways comes to Missoula County. You'll see things, let's see if it'll go. This is unusual.
That would be interesting. That would be an interesting thing to see. I work for the Department of Transportation.
Okay. Well, we could definitely pull that up. Well, if it cooperates, we can. But I know what I've also seen is specific grants for the Missoula Airport, things for low-income taxpayer help, for instance. So all these specific programs, and you can see exactly how much Missoula County gets. What you can also do is a multi-county, so you can see for a particular program how much each of the different counties get. So if you take a particular one for airports or for the highways, you can see the breakdown by county, which I know some folks, especially on my campus, find very, very interesting. And it looks like it's just not cooperating tonight, which is a pity. Well, what I will do, let me see if I can pull things up by program, because that could be really fun. Let's do agency. Let's do Department of Transportation. And in the meantime, I'll close a few of these. Okay. Let me try this. Thanks for bearing with me.
It's pretty exciting, really, to have all this information at your fingertips.
Yeah, it really is, because it's one of those things that finding this information can be a real challenge sometimes. Even finding for a specific sub-program within an agency can be a real challenge. You can find the newer information, the historic information is even harder to find sometimes. So they're making strides in making it much easier to find and to retrieve when it cooperates, which I'm thinking is not tonight, unfortunately. We might want to come back to that in a little bit and see if I'll try that again later. Okay. I'll point out as well, the Congressional Budget Office is another one of those really, really user-friendly sites. They're very prolific. They publish things daily, multiple reports a day. But they're the ones that create the estimates of how much a particular program or piece of legislation will cost. They were in the news a little bit ago because they had figures that differed from the president's in terms of how much some of the stimulus packages or how big the deficit was going to be. So the White House had one particular figure, and the CBO said, actually, we think the deficit's going to be a lot bigger than that. So they produced the information on that, and they have their own way of kind of estimating what things will cost. And like I said, it's pretty user-friendly. They have great graphs. They put things that are particularly of interest or have been reported a lot in the media towards the top. But you can pull up various budget projections, economic projections. They produce a lot of really good information. And they're another one of those agencies that's very good about sending you updates if you want. Okay. All right. Federal Election Commission is another one of those kind of fun follow the money sites where you can see for federal elections, for federal campaigns, who donated money to whom. And I know with this one, it is kind of a work in progress. There's some things that are easier to pull up than others. I can pull up, I think, fairly easy, for instance, folks that had donated to Senator Baucus's campaign, for instance. However, recently when I tried to pull up the same information for President Obama, it timed out. There was just too much, I think, too many names. I just couldn't quite pull it all up, which is a little bit frustrating. So let me see. I can search the disclosure database, which is kind of the main thing. So you can pull things up by individual. So if you wanted to see for a particular individual who they donated money to, which is daunting, and I'm reluctant to do that, you know, if people want to check it out for themselves, I think it's fine, but it's public information. It gets reported.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. And I haven't donated personally, otherwise I would use my name as the example, but I can also search by candidate. So let's do Baucus, since he was just running for re-election. So you can find his listing pretty easily. His principal campaign committee was Friends of Max Baucus, and that's the easier way to find their primary committee, to find who donated to them. But you can pull up individuals who gave to that political action committee, I think it was. I'm sorry, the Friends of Max Baucus. So let's see, everybody under B, for instance. And I hope it's not shocking anybody, but so you can be very, very explicit about what you find out. You can find out specific people who donated to the Baucus campaign and how much and what they do. And it's kind of shocking, actually, that this is public information, but it very much is, because it influences our political process. And so they try to make it as open and easy to find as possible. That said, there's a couple of other websites that I find easier to use to retrieve some of this information, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But the FEC website is really, really interesting, especially in election years. Okay. USAspending.gov is one that tells you which businesses have gotten government contracts, basically. And it's another one of those that I think is a little surprising that it's so open, but it shouldn't be that surprising because it is, again, public information. So things that people compete for. So you can search for contracts. Let's see. Here we go. For awards, in particular, tend to be interesting. So you can search by contractor. What I tend to like to pull up things by vicinity. So I can pull up things for Montana, for instance. Washington Corp? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. We'll have to look at that. So this is 2009, and of course it's abbreviated, but I can also pull up things for like all of last year, which give a better picture. But so it tells you how much in grants, over 500 million went to businesses in Montana. Let's see. And our state is ranked 49 among states for 2008, so we're actually towards the bottom of the list in terms of getting contracts. It's a small state population-wise, so I'm not sure if that's terribly surprising. The number of transactions, it tells you what types of things, and it gives you then, again, which agencies were issuing contracts and which ones are the biggest recipients of those contracts. But I want to see now if I can search, let's see, for Washington, and what that will pull up. And this is a case where I can't remember the specific company name. It's Washington Corp. Okay. That's okay.
I mean, I don't actually know that it's registered. It could be registered in another state.
And I'm not sure if it's in the top 100, although I would suspect it might be. Anyway, that's one that I think deserves, experimentation with at a future time, definitely. Okay, so those are some other accountability tools, but then there's some other things that really talk about the efficiency or the productivity of various agencies that really try to get to the heart of how useful are our various programs. And there's a couple of sites that do that very well. Expectmore.gov is a relatively recent one that talks about which programs are performing or not performing. Pretty simple to use. And the other one that I like a lot is the Government Accountability Office. This is the agency that used to be called the General Accounting Office that changed its name within the past few years to the Government Accountability Office, and it really better reflects what they do. So they're kind of the government watchdog. They're an entity that really reviews agencies, programs, looks for graft and for waste, and they're very prolific in what they produce in terms of reports. So it's daily. They produce anywhere from 3 to 5 reports usually. It's pretty prolific. But they really take their job seriously, and they do some really in-depth investigations. They produce testimony for Congress all the time, but it's a fun resource. Okay. So I want to talk about a few things kind of on the flip side of transparency. So these are some of the things that the government is doing to make their information more available to the general public, not just in libraries, but just on the free web. But then the flip side is the interest that the public has in reusing that information and making things more useful and easy to find. And so I wanted to talk about 6 different projects that I think are particularly useful for getting better access to this information. And they do a very good job. So the first 2 are actually university projects. The American Presidency Project is a product of the University of California at Santa Barbara. And what they're trying to do is pull information on presidential activities from a lot of different sources and putting them together in one website. So what's nice about that, they're making it much easier to find things like presidential signing statements, to find various speeches, what's the term I'm looking for? Proclamations, executive orders, things like that, and putting them all together in one place, going way, way back, which is kind of the unique thing, because these things are contained on various websites in different series, but it's hard to get them all together. So what you can do is pull up things from, public papers, messages in papers, fireside chats. I find that kind of fun. Yeah, that's a lovely thing. And I think these are audio files too, if I recall. Transcript, which is still lovely. And it's, to me, very, very intuitive. So any State of the Union address you want to find, or inaugural address you want to find, very easy. Public papers, though, is really the gem. So what you can do from here is search on this left toolbar for a specific president for a particular term, for instance. If you had heard something that was referenced that, a president issued a proclamation in this month in 1912, you can pull it up by that or by keyword. It's very, very nice. So let me just do a quick search. So how about, let's do our month, April. I want to say 1909, because that was our centennial year, and I'm not entirely sure what will be there. So not a ton, but a couple of special messages from President Taft at that point in time. And these are all text files, so they're pretty easy to pull up. But it's this wealth of information all in one place, so it's very nice. The other one I wanted to point out here is the Historical Census Browser, which is a product of UVA, the University of Virginia. And I get a lot of questions about finding historical census materials. It's just kind of challenging. But they make it very easy to find things to the county level, going pretty far back for basic demographic information. So I had an example I wanted to show, just to give you an idea. It's pretty simple to use. You can just examine things for a particular year or for a particular topic. So let's see. With the Western Montana Fair, I'm always reminded of the Sons of Norway and their booth, and I'm like, how many people of Norwegian descent are in Montana or Missoula County for various years, for instance? So what I can do is pull that information up pretty easily, actually. All right. So I can pull up persons born in Norway. Okay. For this long time range. So it breaks it down for me by state to start. And I can see for Montana, the numbers for 1890 to 1950. And if I click on the box, I can get the county level data. Which is kind of fun. You know, what I will say is not the entirety of census information for that year, for those years. It's kind of the core demographic information. So ethnicity, literacy, general population, some economic, a little bit. It's a good thing to get started. If you have basic questions about how many people lived in Missoula County or Ravalli County in this year, this is a really fast way to find it, which is nice. Although I'll also note the Census and Economic Information Center in Helena is wonderful for finding historical data for Montana as well. But this is a really nice tool if you want to find Montana and other states and break it down by county. Very nice. And let me go back. Okay, a couple of other mashups. These are ones that I think are kind of comparable to that Federal Elections Commission page. The one on the left, Follow the Money, is for state government, which is fairly unique. The FEC site does not do state level data or for state elections, and Follow the Money does. And on the right, Open Secrets is the one that's very comparable to the FEC website because it covers federal elections. They make it, in my mind, easier to get to that data. What's also nice, they have excellent information on influence and lobbying, so that's something that you can't find as easily elsewhere. And their whole goal, I think they're part of the Sunlight Foundation, and their whole goal is to make the information more transparent and open to the public. And it's a very slick, nice looking website. So you see lobbying, heavy hitters, lobbying spending, number of lobbyists, things like that. Thought I had a good search on one of these. Top spenders, things like that. And then I think, let's look up by politicians. All right, so I could find things.
Would it show, for instance, anything about, are there lobbyists who don't spend any money? They just talk to the people and give them information?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. Which would be ideal, actually. That would be kind of the goal.
That's what lobbyists are
Supposed to do, exactly. Let me see. Yeah, top spenders, or how about the non-spenders? How about TV, movies, music? So there are some. There's some zeros in there. I see American Film Institute doesn't spend anything, or doesn't donate to various political action committees, it looks like. But it's fun, and it's a very simple site to use, which is what I like to see. It needs to be very user-friendly. Okay, a couple more, GovTrack and OpenCRS. GovTrack is one I haven't used as much, but I do like it. It's another way to track bills and works with members of Congress. So in some ways it uses that data from Thomas, that website, for congressional information, and they make it very simple to use, actually, more simple than Thomas in a lot of ways. And let me go in there. And they try to pull things together by interesting bills. They pull things together by legislators in a very, very simple way. Yeah, that's a nice thing. They have stories on various bills, for instance. Using trackers. Research. Research is the key one. So you can track various bills Let's see. Find your representative and see what they've done, essentially. So let me do 59801, our zip code. So it gives us, I'll choose Mr. Redberg. Simple information, gives you his birthday, always nice, gives you his website and some YouTube feeds. This is another kind of interesting transparency thing. So the government is really getting on board with, again, going to where their constituents are. And because so many people are using YouTube now, the White House, the House, and the Senate all have official hubs or channels on YouTube. And so they're posting, President Obama is posting his weekly address there, as well as on the main White House website. But then they have all the various speeches from Congress posted on YouTube. So it makes it really nice and easy to find those. It's excellent. It's going where people are, and that's what we're all about.
So what's the difference between .gov and .us?
Good question. .gov, I think, is becoming the standard for government websites. There's some that still are using .us. The Forest Service still uses .us. I'm not entirely sure why, to be honest, but they're both kind of official domains for the government. But .gov is the primary one, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, in theory, .orgs are supposed to be for nonprofits, .coms are supposed to be for commercial entities, and .gov and .us are supposed to be for governmental entities. All right.
And what's a mashup? What does that mean?
That's right, I was going to explain that, sorry. Mashup is a term, it's a way of using information from various sources and kind of mashing them together to make a new thing. Another word to use might be remix, it's what is used sometimes. And so I'm trying to think of good examples. Somebody was just telling me about one where in California, around Oakland, apparently you can overlay, there's a mashup for crime data and Google Maps, and you can kind of mash them together and get that overlay of crime data on the Google map, for instance, and that's kind of a mashup. In this case, I'm kind of calling these mashups because they're taking information from Thomas and from the Senate website. They're kind of putting it together and they're pulling in the YouTube feed. And they're kind of putting all this information together, so they're kind of aggregating it in a new way to make a new product. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. OpenCRS is a case where they're taking and finding Congressional Research Service reports from all over the web because they're hard to find. They're getting user-submitted things, they're getting things submitted by senators, things from other organizations, and they're all sending them to OpenCRS, and they're kind of putting them together in one database so they make it easier to find. What I will say about OpenCRS and CRS reports are surprisingly challenging to find. They're produced by, again, that Congressional Research Service, and they work for Congress. They work for members of Congress, and they create these reports on issues, kind of any issue they want, whether it's foreign affairs or domestic affairs, and they summarize the key points of what's important about that issue right now. And they're really interesting substantive reports that are updated relatively frequently, but they're produced for Congress, so they go to the senator's office, they go to Congress, but they're not distributed to the public, which a lot of librarians find very, very strange, to be honest, because they're such juicy, interesting things. Let me show you that page really quick. And so people have kind of taken it upon themselves to try to create better access to this work that's produced by the government, but not entirely public. So for instance, things that have just been added to the database recently. Things on, let's see, Madagascar's 2009 political crisis. If you're into that, that's going to be a really substantive recent report. Things on NATO, things on, let's see, United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. But just about any topic you could imagine. I don't know if you have a pet topic that you want to look for.
That one on the rights of the child might be interesting.
Yeah. So what it does, it kind of gives you a quick summary to start. It tells you the most recent version and what other versions are available. So sometimes there'll be one. In this case, this is from April 1st, 2009. But there may be a case where there are 3 previous versions, and this is the most recently updated one. But they make it easy to get to the earlier versions as well. And then if you click on the link, in this case, a user submitted this to OpenCRS, and it gets you to the full report. Really nice stuff. So if you want an overview, and a relatively recent overview on a topic of interest, OpenCRS is a good way to go. Okay. So I want to talk about a couple of keeping up tools. And this is kind of true of a lot of government agencies. So there's some different ways beyond going to the agency websites to keep up with things that they're producing. There's things like RSS feeds, email lists, Twitter updates. Are you familiar with RSS at all?
I tried to understand it, but I can't quite get my mind around it.
Okay. RSS is an acronym standing for Really Simple Syndication, and essentially it's a feed or a version of the website that kind of runs behind the website in XML. But what's important about it is that it's something that a newsreader or a news aggregator can check and see when something's changed, essentially. So if you have a reader like Google Reader or Bloglines are two really popular ones, if you subscribe to these websites or to a newspaper or something like that online, basically the aggregator will check the website multiple times a day and bring in the new content when it's there. So instead of going out to 20 websites a day, just in case there might be an update, aggregators will do the work for you, check to see if there's new information and bring it back to your desktop, essentially. And the key thing with some of those, and let me just use this one as an example. I'll kind of point out, if you can kind of see a little bit, up at the toolbar, there's a little orange symbol, and I should have put that on my slide. But this has become kind of the standard symbol. It's this orange box with kind of a radio kind of signal to it. And that's an indication that there's an RSS feed available for this blog, for instance. I'll scroll down and see if I can find a better and larger symbol. Another thing you might see is this little box symbol that says XML. Same kind of situation. It lets you know there's an RSS feed for this particular website. But what I find interesting is that a lot of, if not the majority of almost, of government websites have RSS feeds available now. They've really adopted this format. So instead of having you come to them to get information, they're making it easier to send their information to you. So you can subscribe to, an agency of interest or a program of interest, and it'll let you know. It'll send you updates whenever they have a new news release, for instance. So you can kind of see at the top here, the Department of the Interior has various RSS feeds. So if you want to find out about specifically the Recovery Act and the Department of Interior, they have a feed for that. If you want to find out just general Department of Interior news releases, there's a feed for that as well. So it's one of those ways, we're calling it kind of push technology. Instead of having to go and get the information, the agencies and other websites are pushing the information to the consumer. So trying to make it easier in general. And it's not just the government. I know I've subscribed to a lot of different feeds for, let's see, the New York Times, for instance, has a load of feeds, so I can just get my headlines in my blog reader or my news aggregator every day. Various other websites. And so that's a way for me to kind of keep up with lots of different websites without having to go out to every one, remember, oh yeah, I haven't checked that today. Because I'll have the new information coming to one space for me on the web, which is pretty slick. And what I was going to point out, on the handout and up here I have this keeping up guide, which I would go to, but it's crashed tonight for some reason, but it's something that the University of Montana has been putting together. We use LibGuides as a service, and what I try to do is pull together a whole bunch of RSS feeds and email lists and email newsletters for government agencies to try to make it easier for people to find these things. So that's a nice list of all these different things that you can do to kind of keep up with the government. So they give you some different options. So there's the RSS feeds, but there's also a lot of email newsletters available as well. And the other thing I wanted to point out was the government news blog is something that, again, the University of Montana Library puts out. And what we try to do with that, and that's what we're just looking at, it is a blog, but it's, blogs aren't just for diaries anymore. They haven't been for a while. But what we try to do is we pay attention to various news reports in Montana and in the national news, and we try to make it a little bit easier to find the actual reports behind the news stories. So for instance, today I was posting things about that Superfund listing for Superior to make it easier to get to the text of that proposal. There's something as well that got reprinted in the Missoulian, but was in the Washington Post about the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, wanting to develop a national broadband plan. So I wanted to get information to folks about that plan so they could find it more easily than they might just on the agency website. So those are different ways that the government is trying to send that information out to the general public and make it easier to find, but also how just general citizens and librarians and folks like us are trying to make it easier for citizens to find that information as well. Any questions?
Oh, it's so interesting. So this is, okay, MPT-GovInfo is, okay, you guys make that at U of M?
Yeah.
And anybody can access it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's mt-govinfo.blogspot.com. It started off as an experiment and we just kind of kept it going. But those are just some different options. And now actually I'm going to go back to that consolidated federal funds report to see if it's more cooperative now. Because it really is a fun one. So I'm going to try again by geography to get the Missoula County stuff. I'll just go with all types. And if it times out again, I'll know. It's just not running too well tonight. I think it's not going to cooperate. Oh, that was my last slide, actually. So, do you have any other questions? No. Okay.
This has really been precious.
Good. I hope so. I hope that at least I've covered a few things that were new to you and to the audience at home, so to speak. That kind of gives some ideas about different ways to track down government information that are some newer tools. Because I think there really is a movement to try to make information much more transparent and accessible. And I'm really hoping it's going to only get better from here, essentially. But my contact information is on the University of Montana website as well, and I'm here to help, both the folks on my campus as well as the general public in Montana help them find government information. That's what my job is, essentially, as government documents librarian. And we live to serve. We really, really do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.